Today, I bring you two stories that at first blush you might not think actually involve Hillary Clinton, but as is often the case, it turns out they do. It really does seem that all roads lead to Hillary. That's coming up on today's Breakdown. Jerry Dunleavy at the Washington Examiner has an excellent piece in which he spells out the significance of the first of these two stories. He points out that the potential legal conflicts faced by Igor Danchenko wouldn't matter to the court unless John Durham, the special prosecutor, were looking specifically at Hillary Clinton and those dwelling in her inner circle for the origin of the phony Trump-Russia hoax. It's really starting to look as though Durham has put the pieces of this monumentally complex puzzle together, and he knows exactly what he's dealing with and is methodically bearing down on Hillary Clinton. First of all, can anything else be said about Hillary Clinton's connection with the Christopher Steele dossier and the Trump-Russia hoax? Well, actually, yes. I tell this story simply as an amusing anecdote that testifies to the incestuous nature of Washington, D.C. politics and law, which should be news to absolutely no one. Gosh, it's really challenging for a Democrat in Washington, D.C. to find legal representation that doesn't have some huge conflict of interest. It's amazing they can find conflict-free representation at all, though I have to say it must be even harder for Republican associates of Donald Trump to get representation, as some D.C. law firms won't even take those cases. If memory serves, top firms in D.C. refused to represent President Trump during his impeachments. Apparently, there was concern among the attorneys that they might be excluded from certain circles and not get invited to the right cocktail parties if they did represent him. But I digress. Anyway, consider the case of Igor Danchenko, the Russian-born subsource who has been indicted and who has pleaded not guilty on 5 counts of making false statements to the FBI about the information that he provided for Christopher Steele, which was used in the fictitious dossier. Danchenko has already had to replace one defense attorney, Mark Schimel, because Schimel also happens to be representing one of the Georgia Tech computer scientists, Manos Antonakis, who has been identified as researcher number 1 in special counsel John Durham's speaking indictment of former Perkins Coie partner Michael Sussman. Now, if this is beginning to get a little tangled up for you, I totally understand. For me, too. But it gets better. So after he dropped Schimel as his attorney due to his conflict of interest, Danchenko went to the law firm Schertler and Honorato to engage the services of Danny Honorato and Stuart Sears. But now we see this might not work out either, because it turns out that another lawyer from that firm, identified as Robert Trout, has deep ties with Hillary's 2016 presidential campaign. So John Durham has put his concerns about this potential conflict into a court filing, asking a federal judge to determine if there's a problem. To complicate this matter even further, Trout hasn't just been involved in the Clinton campaign, but he also personally represented John Podesta. Podesta, former chairman of her campaign during his December 2017 testimony before the House Intelligence Committee. Now, Danchenko may have to keep looking to find a D.C. attorney who's not tainted by some entanglement with the Clintons. To that, I would say, good luck. Durham said it's possible for the court to waive this conflict of interest, but it was his responsibility to bring it to their attention. But I saved the more compelling story for last. Did you know that in spite of her determination to destroy inconvenient or even incriminating emails from when she was President Obama's Secretary of State, some communications have turned up from June of 2009 that show that she was aware then of the threat posed by Chinese bioweapon research. More specifically, at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? At that time, she warned in an email to embassies that such activities could lead to biological weapons and proliferation of those. She wrote, quote, "The U.S. believes participants would benefit from hearing about France's experiences assisting China in setting up a biosafety level 4, called a BSL-4 laboratory, at the Wuhan Institute of Virology from the export control and intangible technology transfer perspectives. We are particularly interested to know how China plans to vet incoming foreign researchers from countries of biological weapons proliferation concern." End quote. Now, this went out in a preparation for a meeting coming up a few months later of the Australia Group, which is an international export control forum whose purpose was to prevent the spread of technologies and research that could be used for chemical and or biological weapons. Members of the group included the EU, France, India, Japan, South Korea, and others. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, they weren't members. So the danger posed by Chinese research into bioweapons was at least on Hillary's radar screen in 2009, but then the issue appears to have been dropped. A decade later, when the pandemic hit, Hillary responded to suspicions that COVID-19 had leaked from the lab with accusations of racism by President Trump against Asian Americans. The recent rise of anti-Asian bigotry fueled by Donald Trump's racist rhetoric, as she tweeted at the time. What a crock. Hillary must have known good and well in her first year at the State Department that the Wuhan lab posed a legitimate threat to public safety all over the globe. But she'd let it drop years before the pandemic hit, and no doubt wouldn't want anyone talking about that. So she used a bit of misdirection and painted Trump as a racist for daring to implicate the Chi-Coms. With a little help from the media, that's what the conversation became. But now we know the real story. Now, if you want to get some people, maybe yourself, on Hillary's hit list, it's real simple. All you got to do is subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll leave a like and a comment below. And if you want more of my news analysis and commentary, sign up for my newsletter, MikeHuckabee.com. That's where you go, and you can sign up, and it is totally 100% free. I hope you'll check back in tomorrow for another breakdown of the news. That's going to do it for this edition of The Breakdown. I'm Mike Huckabee.